They say a life can change in a second, but for Elijah Carter, it didn't take that long. Just one breath, one blink, one footstep in the wrong direction, and everything he knew was gone. This is Mark Joie, and you're watching Injustice Browning. If this story grabs your heart, even just a little, don't just watch, subscribe, comment, speak it out loud, because silence has cost us enough. It was July. Georgia heat hanging thick in the air like punishment. The kind of day when folks sit on porches with wet rags on their necks and radios humming out green through torn screens. Elijah had $1.50 in his pocket. He was going to the corner store for a soda and a pack of now and laters. He was 14, skinny, knob-kneed, tall for his age, but still a boy. He'd just finished sweeping the church basement that morning for a few extra bucks from Pastor Dwight. He always helped out when he could, washing his mama's scrubs, walking his little sister to daycare, patching the leak under the kitchen sink even though it never held. The corner store was 2 blocks from home, same one his mama used to get Kim peaches and bleach every Saturday. Elijah knew the cashier, Mr. Patel. He'd hold up the candy jar and say, "Just one, Eli, just one." And Elijah would laugh and take to anyway. But that day, there was no laughter, no time for it. He didn't see the squad car pull up, didn't even hear the door slam. All he saw was the black barrel of a shotgun pointed straight at his chest, and the voices yelling, "Hands, hands, let me see your hands," for cops, to white, to black, all shouting over each other, guns drawn like they were at war. Elijah dropped the soda, raised his arms, didn't speak. His lips were shaking too bad to form the words anyway. He looked like a deer frozen in the headlights of something too big, too cruel to understand. And from the porch across the street, his mama screamed, "That's my son." She shouted, sprinting barefoot across the pavement, still in her nursing uniform. He ain't do nothing. He just a boy. But they didn't hear her, or they didn't care to, because in their minds, Elijah didn't look like a boy. He looked like what they were trained to fear: tall, dark skin, hoodie pulled low, eyes wide from shock, but they saw guilt, not confusion, not terror. They slammed him to the ground, knee in the back, hand on his neck. His mother screamed louder, lunged, got held back by a neighbor. Phones came out. Cameras rolled. People yelled his name. Some cried. One woman, old Miss Geneva, started praying out loud, "Lord, don't let them kill that child. Lord, not today. Please, not another one." But it didn't matter. The cuffs clicked down like the sound of a door locking behind you, like the end of something, like a judge pounding his gavel and saying, "You don't belong out here." They shoved him into the back seat. He turned once, just once, looked through the glass at his mother's face. There was blood on his lip, gravel in his cheek. His knees scraped raw from the concrete, but it wasn't the pain that changed him. It was the look in her eyes, like she was watching a piece of her own soul being dragged into a burning house. And she couldn't go in after it. The doors shut. The siren didn't even go on. Just the slow roll of a car, leaving the block, carrying Elijah away from everything he thought was safe. No warrant, no lawyer, no Miranda rights read, just a call over the radio. "We got him, suspecting custody." But he wasn't a suspect. He was a child, and they didn't get the right one. And in that one moment, hot sun, cracked pavement, candy spilled. On the sidewalk, Elijah Carter became a statistic. Another name whispered in barbershops and kitchens. Another boy gone. And the saddest part, he still thought it was a mistake, that it'd be cleared up, that someone would fix it. But this country doesn't fix boys like Elijah. It files them away. And in the back of that cruiser, as the cuffs bit into his skin, he didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just stared forward, breathing shallow, asking himself the question that would haunt him for years: what did I do wrong? But the truth, he never had to do anything. He was born black. That was enough. The courthouse smelled like old paper and cold coffee. That kind of sterile, stale air where nothing living seemed to belong. Elijah sat with his hands cuffed in front of him, wrists still bruised from the day they took him. He hadn't even been allowed to change clothes. Same hoodie, same jeans with the hole in the knee, same scuffed sneakers with the loose sole he kept meaning to glue back on. They didn't even wipe the blood off his face before the hearing. He looked like what they wanted him to look like, and that was enough. His court-appointed lawyer leaned in 5 minutes before they went in and whispered, "Just take the deal. 10 years and you'll be out when you're still young. It's better than 20. Elijah blinked. 10 years. He was 14. He didn't even know how to shave yet. 10 years felt like forever. 10 years sounded like death. But I didn't do anything, he whispered back. The lawyer didn't even blink, just shrugged, like he'd heard it 100 times that week. Maybe he had. Elijah's mama was sitting in the second row. Her scrubs were wrinkled, one strap on her purse held together with a paperclip. She'd come straight from the hospital, worked the night shift, clocked out, drove to court. No sleep, no food, just fear holding her upright. She stood when they called his name. Your Honor, she said, voice shaking, please, just let him talk. Just let me talk. My son ain't never even held a gun. He was at the church that morning. Ask the pastor. Ask anybody. The judge didn't look at her. The DA did, though. A young white man in a press suit with a smirk that said he'd already won. He stood up with his folder full of nothing and told the room that Elijah Carter matched the description, that he was seen near the scene, that the cashier was still shaken up, that this young man had shown signs of aggression though he couldn't name one. No fingerprints, no video, no weapon, just skin, just timing, just being in the wrong place while black. Elijah tried to speak. The judge told him to be quiet. His lawyer didn't stand to defend him. Not once. He kept thinking, where's Mr. Patel? Why isn't he here? He knows me, but Mr. Patel never showed. No witness did. The store had been robbed, yes, by someone taller, older, broader. But that part didn't seem to matter. Elijah fit the outline. That was all it took. When the sentence was read, there was no gasp in the courtroom, no shock, just silence, cold, practiced silence, like they'd done this before, because they had. Over and over. 10 years in juvenile detention. The judge didn't even look him in the eyes. Just read the paper and move on to the next case, like ordering food, like checking off a box. Case number 7-3-1, processed and closed. Elijah's mama stood there frozen, lips parted like she was still trying to breathe. But the breath wouldn't come, not fully, not anymore. She tried to walk toward him, but they were already pulling him away. 10 years, 10 years, you just took my baby, she screamed, and still nobody flinched. That courtroom didn't see a child, didn't see a future, or a family, or a scared little boy with candy still melted in his pocket from the day he got arrested. They saw danger, a statistic, a number to be processed before lunch. Elijah turned once more as they led him out, and for a second, just a split second, he thought someone might stand up, say something, do something, but they did in single quotes no one in that room, not the lawyer, not the judge, not even the black bailiff said a word. They just let it happen. That's what injustice looks like sometimes. Not loud, not violent, just quiet, cold, professional, like a machine that doesn't even know it's crushing you. And so they sent him away to a place built for broken boys and forgotten names. And Elijah Carter, 14 years old, honor roll student, favorite color, green, wanted to be a mechanic like his uncle, was erased right there in plain sight. Not because they proved he was guilty, but because they never cared if he was innocent. The cell door shut with a sound that didn't echo but sank, like being buried alive. You think prison is loud, chaotic. Sometimes it is. But the silence, that's what gets you, the kind that wraps around your chest and pulls. Slow and steady. Elijah Carter felt that silence before his first night even started. He was 14, and already disappearing. Juvenile prison was never about reform. Not really. It was punishment dressed up in policy, concrete floors, chipped paint, guards who looked away just enough, and cameras that somehow never caught what needed to be seen. The older boys ran the dorms. Respect came in bruises and split lips. Weakness got you noticed, and getting noticed got you hurt. Elijah learned to keep his head down, mouth shut, eyes forward. But his mind, he guarded that like gold. The first year, he got jumped for no reason, thrown into a wall so hard it cracked a tooth. The guards called it a minor incident. The second year, he saw a boy try to hang himself with a torn bed sheet. Elijah screamed until someone came. They cut him down, but the kid never spoke again, just rocked in his bunk every night, humming low like he was somewhere else. Elijah started writing the next day, a notebook stolen from the supply closet, a pen snapped from a broken clipboard. Every night under that flickering light bulb, he wrote, not about the fights, not about the guards, about who he was, who he used to be, who he still wanted to be. He wrote letters to his mama most he never sent, letters to a little sister who'd only been 3 when they took him. He didn't know what she looked like anymore, whether she still remembered his face, whether she still called him Eli Eli, but the words kept him from unraveling. Year 3. He found a torn-up book in the library, Criminal Procedure. Pages missing, spine bent, notes scribbled in the margins from some kid long gone. He didn't understand half of it, but he read it, cover to cover, again and again. And then came another, then another, old law books, scattered through the shelves, like ghosts. He started copying them, by hand, word for word. He didn't know why at first. Maybe to make the nights pass faster, maybe because it made him feel like he mattered. But somewhere in the middle of all that ink, Elijah found something, bigger than survival. He found purpose. The others noticed. They'd see him bent over that notebook every night, lips moving like he was studying for something. One of the older guys asked, "You think you're going to be a lawyer or something?" Elijah didn't answer, but in his mind, he whispered, "Why not?" He watched boys age out and disappear. Some got released, some went upstate, some didn't make it. One boy he shared a bunk with took his own life after a phone call with his mother. Said she didn't recognize his voice. That's all it took. Elijah grieved in silence. There were no funerals behind that fence, just empty bunks, cleaned fast, as if they never existed. But he stayed steady. He learned the names of every judge in the county that sentenced him, learned what emotion was, what due process should have meant, what an effective counsel really looked like, and through it all, he kept one thing close, his mother's voice. "You are not what they say you are." He'd say it to himself like prayer, like armor. On nights when his bones ached and the screams from the hallway made sleep impossible. On birthdays he spent alone. On Christmas mornings with no lights, no tree, just a cold tray of gray eggs. 10 years is a long time to survive a place that feeds on hopelessness. But Elijah didn't just survive. He built something inside himself, piece by piece, with ink and sweat and silence. When he turned 24, they gave him a trash bag full of his belongings. To books, a notepad, a photo of his mama with the corners faded. They walked him to the gate, didn't say goodbye, just unlatched the door and told him, "You're done." He didn't cry, didn't smile, just stepped forward. The sun hit different, outside, brighter, but not warmer. Elijah Carter walked out 10 years older, 10 years harder. The boy they took at 14 was gone, but the man standing there, he was ready, not free, not yet, not fully, but he knew now his mind was his weapon, his words, his shield, and he wasn't done fighting. Elijah thought walking out of that gate meant something. He thought breathing free air would taste different. He expected, maybe not forgiveness, but at least a place to start over. But freedom, is it real when the world never stops punishing you? He came home to a city that had moved on without him. Same cracked sidewalks, same rust on the bus stops, but the people different. Or maybe he was. The first time someone looked away from him, it wasn't a stranger. It was Mr. Howard, from 3 houses down, the man who used to sneak him $5 for mowing the lawn. Elijah waved, smiled. Mr. Howard crossed the street without a word. The second time, it was a childhood friend, Nate. Used to play basketball with him every Saturday behind the school. Elijah ran into him at the gas station, said his name like it meant something. Nate stared for a second, then just said, "Damn, man," and walked off. No handshake, no glad you're back, just distance. That record followed him everywhere. No one wanted to hear about innocence, or how it was all a mistake. It didn't matter. The system stamped him with a word that erased all the others. Felon, job applications, tossed out. One employer laughed out loud when he saw the gap in Elijah's work history, a whole decade missing. He said, smirking. Elijah left before he could say more. He finally landed a dishwashing gig, cash only, under the table. Greasy back kitchen in a diner where the manager drank more than he worked. He scrubbed plates 12 hours a day for pennies. Didn't complain, just nodded, took the work, kept quiet. He lived with his cousin in a 1-bedroom off Highway 20. Roaches in the walls. He barely worked, but there was a roof, and for now, that was enough. Every night, he pulled out the same worn notebook, the one he'd carried out of prison like it was a holy book. He read by flashlight so his cousin could sleep, studied case law, memorized terms, practiced writing briefs he didn't know if anyone would ever read. He started working on his own appeal, line by line, filling out forms he had to print at the library, mailing them from the post office with change he saved from leftover tips. He wasn't trying to prove anything to the world anymore. The world had already made up its mind. He was just trying to breathe without chains on his chest, trying to live without the weight of a lie crushing his ribs. Every now and then, he passed the church he used to clean as a boy. The doors were painted new, but the building still had the same smell with polish and Sunday perfume. He never went in, just stood outside, listening. He didn't know if God still lived there, but he hoped. One morning, he caught his reflection in the diner window. The man staring back looked tired, eyes too heavy for his age, but behind them, something sharp was still alive, something they hadn't broken. The world saw a felon, a threat, an afterthought, but Elijah knew better. He knew he'd survived something most people wouldn't have. He knew what it meant to be erased and still be here, still fighting, still hoping, not for a handout, not for sympathy, just for one door to stay open long enough for the truth to walk through. Sometimes justice doesn't come like thunder. It doesn't roar through the doors or light up the sky. Sometimes it shows up slow, quiet, tired, just like you. It was a Tuesday when Elijah walked into the legal aid clinic downtown. He'd heard they helped ex-offenders. Most didn't return calls, but he figured, why not try one more? He sat in the waiting room for over 2 hours. No appointment, just his notebook in hand, same one he carried since the inside. Pages, worn thin, corners folded, ink bleeding through. Then she walked in. Her name was Rochelle, mid-40s, black, hair pulled back, bags under her eyes like she hadn't slept right in years. She wasn't a lawyer, just a paralegal, but when she called his name, something in her tone didn't sound like the others. She read his file in silence, skimmed the sentencing sheet, looked at the plea agreement. Then she paused. 14, she asked. Quiet. Elijah nodded. She looked up at him, not through him, not past him, at him. And for the first time in years, he felt seen. She didn't promise anything. She just said, this isn't right, and started making copies. The process took 3 more years. Paperwork, hearings, denials, reschedules, weeks of silence, months with no movement. But Rochelle didn't let it drop. She found a public defender who still cared, a young brother from Chicago who said, this case don't sit right with me. Together, they built it up brick by brick, every hole in the case, every falsified statement, every inch of doubt that had been ignored the first time. Then, out of nowhere, the call came. The man who was robbed, grown now, a father himself. He reached out, said he couldn't sleep some nights, said he remembered the pressure, the fear, the badge in his face. They told him to pick someone, said the boy they had looked close enough, told him if he didn't help, they might never catch the real one. He cried when he said it, apologized over and over, but Elijah didn't hate him. He knew what fear could do to a person. The motion went through. They reopened the case. A judge reviewed the files. The cops who'd written the reports, one had been dismissed from the force 2 years after Elijah's conviction for misconduct. Fabricated evidence in another case. It all unraveled from there. And at 28 years old, Elijah Carter stood in court again. But this time, no cuffs, no orange suit, just a shirt, a tie, and the weight of 10 stolen years pressing against his back. The judge cleared his name, vacated the conviction, just like that. It was over. No cameras, no headlines, no apology. Just a quiet line in a legal document that said, you were right. He walked out of that courthouse into the sunlight, shoulders back, eyes forward. Not a free man. He'd been that for a while now, but finally, no longer guilty in the eyes of a system that had never seen him as innocent to begin with. And that fire inside him, it burned brighter than ever, because now he knew the truth could win, even when it takes its time. Elijah Carter stands before a group of teenagers in a classroom, sunlight spilling through the windows like a quiet promise. He's not a hero, at least, not the kind with medals or headlines. He's a man who lived what they only hear about in stories, and he speaks with a calm that holds storms beneath the surface. He doesn't raise his voice, but when he talks, every word carries weight. He tells them about being judged before speaking, about how the world can see your skin and already decide your story. They looked at me and saw a threat. He says simply, not a boy, not a kid who dreamed, just the label they slapped on me. Guilty before a word was said. The room is silent, but his words settle in like a heavy truth they can't ignore. He talks about the years behind fences, how the silence of prison isn't peace, but a kind of noise that buries you alive. How surviving isn't about being strong all the time. Sometimes it's just holding on long enough to see the next day. And how the system that took him tried to break his spirit, but couldn't erase the man he was becoming inside. Elijah doesn't carry anger when he speaks. Not anymore. Instead, there's honesty, a sharp, clear light cutting through decades of shadow. He tells the kids that the world might try to punish you for surviving, for being yourself, but they can't take your mind. They can't take your will, not if you refuse to give it away. He shares stories of friends who never got a second chance, boys swallowed whole by a system that didn't want to see them, and he warns, if you don't fight, if you don't speak, you risk disappearing too outside those classrooms. Elijah has become something bigger than a survivor. He's a voice for the youth caught in the same cycles he escaped, a fighter for justice in the neighborhoods where hopes get crushed under worn shoes. He meets with lawyers, works with community groups, shows up where his presence means the difference between silence and change. Sometimes, after a long day, someone asks him if he forgives the system, if he forgives the people who locked him away, the ones who never looked twice at a scared boy with hands raised. He doesn't answer right away. Then he says, I don't need their forgiveness. I never needed their permission to be free. He smiles, then not bitter, not cold, just sure. I was free the whole time. Because freedom isn't something they can give you. It's something you take, something you hold tight, no matter what walls they build. Elijah Carter's story isn't just about what was stolen. It's about what he reclaimed, his boyhood, his dignity, his future, and now his voice. Because freedom isn't a moment. It's a lifetime. It's a fire you carry, a light that keeps burning no matter what. And that fire is the one thing no one can ever take away.